He runs like a shadow, wearing another man's thunder. Patroclus, heart on fire, mounted in the bronze of Achilles, charging beneath the broken light before Troy. The Myrmidons pour after him like iron rain as he storms toward the conflict. His face is not his own. The armor makes him a god's echo, and every spear that turns away at the sight of that gleaming bronze brings hope to a fleet that has known only fear. But as he charges, the armor sits heavy, a borrowed destiny, and a question burns through the clamor of the field. Could a loyal heart carry a king's wrath, or will the mantle crush him before the dawn? Patroclus had been no stranger to courage in the long years that led to this hour. In the quiet times before the ships were beached, he was known among the Myrmidons as a man steady as a keel. He was a man whose laugh could knit a campfire into a home, but whose grief at Achilles' recent withdrawal had become a slow, living ache. He had walked the Achaean ships with a patient hand, binding wounds and keeping the watch by the beached vessels, while rumor rode the sea that Troy might yet burn. Time had passed like a tide since Achilles had withdrawn his spear and his glory from the desperate Greek host. There had been months of stinging insult, of ships threatened, and of men dying under a sky that would not be bent by pride. The omens of the end were thin as smoke, a hawk circling backwards, and a dream that thudded in Patroclus' sleep. Yet, among these dark signs, his loyalty outweighed his fear. The land was bronze and dust, the sea a black ribbon. This was the age of spear and oath. His plan was simple and terrible in its clarity. He would put on Achilles' armor, the bright, fated harness no other soul could wear without bending fate, and lead the Myrmidons from the ships to drive the Trojans back from the blackened hulls. He did not seek Achilles' place for the sake of glory. He sought only to save their ships and their men. Pride and duty tangled inside him as the private grief for friends pulled him. The knowledge that Achilles' name on the field could turn the whole tide pulled him toward the fight. He told himself he was only a mask. He said, low and final, "Let me drive them from the ships." That small vow would echo later like a bell struck by grief. The risk was clear and yet sweet. To wear a king's face and bend the enemy by the terror of a legend, ritual and haste braided their preparations. The Myrmidons drew greaves and helm. The salt-smeared leather creaked, and the bronze breastplate, Achilles' breastplate, was buckled with hands that trembled and then steadied. Patroclus took the helm and felt the weight sink into his shoulders. Not only the weight of metal, but the stories of Achilles' rage, the memory of a man who made the very seas listen. Nearby, Automedon gathered the chariot, the horses snorting and hooves beating like drums. Machaon tended a wound and spat with contempt at prophecy, while Nestor's calm counsel hovered like smoke, warning of a line that once crossed could not be uncrossed. The sky was a low lid. Gulls circled the ships as if to mark the moment. Patroclus drank wine, bound leather at his wrists, and allowed himself one lean smile. "Bring me back to the oars," he told Automedon, a phrase that would return in the mouths of men. The thunder began with a gap in the line. At first, it was only a fold in the enemy, a scatter of shields broken like driftwood. Then, Patroclus moved through them, and the world tilted. He struck with Myrmidon edge, iron singing. The sight of Achilles' armor did its terrible work. Trojans fled like cattle. He found Sarpedon in the fray, Sarpedon, son of Zeus, a lion from Lycia, and there was a brief meeting of blades. Spear to spear, man to man. Patroclus drove his spear true. Sarpedon fell like an oak uprooted. Above, the gods gathered and argued like wind on a cliff. Zeus was moved to pity, but Hera insisted that fate must hold. The Myrmidons stripped the fallen and prizes were taken, and for a time hope seemed not a borrowed thing, but an inheritance. Then fate turned with the quiet cruelty of a god. Patroclus overreached his mortal strength. He pursued the Trojans to the very gates of Troy, where the city's shadow waited like a net. There Apollo, who loves to meddle in mortal glory, stepped between the spears and Patroclus' senses. A fool's sap ran through his veins. He was struck by confusion. His spear slipped. A Trojan, Euphorbos, found room to wound him with a clean, burning thrust. He fell, and breath left him in short, hot pools. Hector watched the fallen hero. The Prince of Troy, who had been forced to retreat when Patroclus first came like thunder, now came forward again, not merely to slay a foe, but to unmask a lie. Hector's spear struck true. He pierced Patroclus' side and left the warm earth to drink. Patroclus lay like a child, folded under a cloak, his face wet with the dust and loosened hair of a man who had worn another's name. Action, breath, iron, blood. The field became a storm of hands gripping the body, of warriors trying to push the dead back to their own, of helmets gleaming and shields thudding. The Greeks fought to haul Patroclus away, the Trojans to rip him from their grasp. In the press, Euphorbos boasted, then fell to a Greek spear, and all the while, Patroclus' breath shortened and his hands bled. The men who loved him held him and cursed the pitiless heavens. He tried to speak, to rally the Myrmidons, to warn Achilles of the coming doom, but his voice thinned like smoke. In that small pause of the world, a revelation came like a crack in armor. The armor had not been a mask to protect a friend, but a mirror that showed what the world desired to see. Patroclus' strength had been mortal. Achilles' name had been the blade. The act of wearing it drew down powers. The act of wearing the king's mantle was not meant for him. He understood in the final cold clarity that his choice had been born of love and not of wisdom. He realized that his attempt to carry another man's wrath had unlatched a chain leading straight to his own undoing. This was not merely the fall of one warrior. It was the moment the story demanded blood to pay for the borrowed light of the hero. They stripped him as victors strip a carven statue. Hector, with hands still shaking from the fight, tore Achilles' armor from Patroclus' corpse and let it glitter in the Trojan's sun, a prize and a blasphemy. The bronze that had shone as a promise to the Greeks now sat on Trojan hands, and the sight was a new wound. Men who had loved Patroclus howled. Menelaus and Ajax tried in vain to hold the line of the dead. The Myrmidons gathered round, their faces ashen as oars broken on the shore. The city took the armor into its walls. Word ran like fire. Achilles' friend was dead, and Achilles' glory was on the enemy. No man who had seen the breastplate catch the sun would ever again mistake the small, loyal heart for the storm it had attempted to wear. When the battle stilled, the cost lay open and clean for the whole world to see. Patroclus' body, returned at last, bore more than spear marks. It carried the burden of a lesson that would echo into the next day's slaughter. The Myrmidons mourned not only a comrade, but a truth. Love without measure is a flame that burns what it seeks to keep. The ships rocked under a silence like a held breath. Torches were lit, and the soft wash of waves seemed suddenly obscene in their calm. No victory is free of debt. Those who watched understood that no victory taken in another man's name can save a man from the weight of what he borrows. The armor had done what armor does. It told the world who a man seemed to be, and in telling that lie, had invited doom. The wounds were many, the flesh torn, the oaths shattered, and the Greek line broken by grief. Yet beyond the visible ruin, a deeper cost lay heavier. Fate had been altered. Achilles would learn what it means to lose a heart that kept him human. Patroclus' deed had prevented the burning of the ships for a night. It had also lit the pyre that would demand a greater price. What carried Patroclus through was not borrowed terror, but a hunger to protect what he loved, friendship as sacrament. In the last hours, he did not seek to be Achilles. He sought only to keep men from dying in the dark. History remembers Patroclus for loyalty and ferocity. For the world, he thrust his friend's fame into the breach and paid with blood. But in the trial of the borrowed mantle, he learned this, that love must be measured, and that a heart, however brave, is not the same as a king's wrath. Walk with us through the old stories. Subscribe to Saga Weaver, where ancient warriors face impossible choices.